The Resignation by Claire Jones. A podcast on the fragility apparent in our electoral system under the sustained attack of a narcissistic populist and his media cronies.
In Boris Johnson's resignation speech, we saw the pathological narcissism up close and raw. The victim mindset, the petulant resentment, the vacuum where personal responsibility should be, and the vindictive casting about for culprits to blame for his downfall. These are the responses of a man who's had his own way throughout his privileged life and isn't accustomed to being unable to wriggle out of the net created by his own failures.
Dangerously flawed though Johnson's character is, his resignation is seen as a healthy demonstration of UK democracy flexing its muscles. When deviant populists emerge, we can rest assured that British good sense will eventually join with the good chaps of government to remove them. Here, our democratic rights are protected by the responsiveness of government to us. We see that Johnson has fallen from grace. So, in response to our wishes, his ministers withdraw their support too. But what took them so long? Some have been mesmerised by the success of Johnson's Brexit mandate, his 80-seat majority and his magic charisma. These Teflon features provided ballast against every dip in his poll ratings, every cover-up, every lie and disastrous decision that dogged his 2-year leadership. The ritual of defending your leader is a comfortable, habit-forming part of political life that can blind ministers to reality.
But in Johnson's case, these excuses are a sham. It's one thing to turn a blind eye to the odd ministerial affair or expenses scandal. But what you cannot say is, well, yes, we knew even in 2019 that Johnson was a dishonest, incompetent, morally bankrupt narcissist who had already been declared unfit for office by his employer at the Daily Telegraph. And yes, during Johnson's time in office, he has displayed all these faults: unlawfully proroguing Parliament, trashing the UK's international reputation, keeping bullies and sex pests in key government posts, overseeing unlawful PPE contracts, flouting his own lockdown rules, lying to Parliament, and last but worst, overseeing thousands of avoidable COVID deaths. But he got Brexit over the line, so it's okay. This defence is way over the required loyalty threshold and is not okay. In fact, it's obscene.
The unlawful prorogation of Parliament in 2019 should have put Johnson's cabinet on alert, but it didn't. What followed was a relentless flow of misdeeds which piled up as fast as the bodies, yet nothing was done. Anyone trying to flag up the truth was vilified by government-supporting media with accusations like, as lefty woke Remainer. Even in Johnson's final hours, the excruciatingly condescending Jacob Rees-Mogg was still reassuring us that Macmillan lost his entire cabinet. By-elections mean nothing at all, and the illustrious PM is simply fulfilling his mandate.
Supposedly, Pinchergate was the trigger for Johnson's removal because it demonstrated that he had failed to change either the culture of Westminster or himself. But this is nonsense. Ministers knew perfectly well that Johnson couldn't change, so giving him the benefit of the doubt was just a smokescreen. Pinchergate wasn't their last straw, but simply the point at which their cover was finally blown beyond repair.
Crucially, in this unfolding saga, it wasn't the government or the media who sought the truth. In fact, the truth emerged only through the determination of a few investigative journalists, whistleblowers, and independent organisations. It was Gina Miller who took Johnson to court over the prorogation, Pippa Crerar who unearthed Partygate, the Good Law Project who investigated the PPE contract scandal, and Sir Simon MacDonald who blew the whistle on Pinchergate. Without the chance presence of people like this, armed with the requisite skills, integrity and determination, Johnson's ministers would have continued their blithe defence of the indefensible, and the toxic propaganda spun by their supporting media wouldn't have been challenged. Johnson's eventual resignation was not because he had strayed too far from acceptable standards of leadership, but because the public was forcibly awakened to key truths leaked by a few individuals. These revelations finally triggered condemnation of Johnson, which, in turn, caused his MPs to realise that their constituency seats were threatened. And it is this that turned the tables. Johnson's ministers began to see the danger to themselves of keeping him.
A system in which the correction of political mistakes hangs only on ministerial self-interest and the chance presence of a few honourable truth-seekers should remind us how vulnerable our democracy is. Let's consider a hypothetical scenario. Imagine a possible world in which Johnson behaves exactly as he has done, but with a few tweaks. Here, journalists like Crerar are absent. Perhaps the Mirror has already been banned. Imagine also that Channel 4 News was cancelled back in 2019. The right-wing news media are pressurised with even bigger donations to support the Prime Minister. Activists are sent out in droves to shore up support, and funds are poured into continuing Cambridge Analytica-style campaigns on social media to defend his actions. This isn't such a crazy scenario because some of it has already happened. Johnson got into power in the first place because his campaign team successfully conned us into giving him an 80-seat majority to get Brexit done. His colluding media then protected him over the appalling pandemic management and Partygate. If they weren't completely successful, this may be only because Johnson's spin doctors lacked time to strengthen his populist programme enough to bury the awkward facts also emerging.
The idea that democracy has kicked in because the public and their serving government of good chaps have reliably come to their senses is false. The US had a narrow escape when Biden plucked US democracy from the jaws of Trump. Similarly, the events leading to Johnson's resignation highlight how close to the edge our democracy veered. UK democracy is currently delivered by voters hotly pursued and misled by news media barons, by party MPs prepared to jettison all standards in the cause of party survival, and by the lucky presence of individuals and organisations with the right determination and integrity.
It's no good saying we can rely on the wisdom of the electorate if they don't have access to the truth. Nor can we rely on ministers if they only change course when their seats are at risk. If Johnson's populist approach and the media machine had conned the public just slightly better, his ratings could have survived, and therefore so would the tolerance of his ministers. Their seats would have remained safe, and their defences of the indefensible would have continued unchecked.
This precarious situation illustrates how dangerous our first-past-the-post voting system is, where it promotes winners who, buttressed by their own party and media, become unassailable. We need a new, modern voting system of proportional representation that protects us against disasters like Johnson by using non-adversarial, multi-party governments in which parties work together and power is shared. This system should include a written constitution with ministerial accountability built in and make education reform central. We are what we read. So, until our education includes critical thinking about politics and media, then we are no better than the media diet we are fed. This is how Johnson came to power. He was born on the wave of an enormous con pushed by the press over the value of an anti-EU crusade.
The crucial lesson here is that enough of us fell for it. And if we can fall for this con, then we can fall for others. The story of Johnson's misrule and resignation is the story of why we urgently need constitutional change and a new kind of politics.
The Resignation by Claire Jones was recorded at the Westbury People's Gallery on behalf of the West England Bylines. Readings were by Claire Jones and Malcolm Atkins, and music was by Malcolm Atkins.
Yes, we'll smoke together.